Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Dear Evan Hansen hits movie theaters today after making its world premiere at DC's Arena Stage in 2015 before becoming a Tony-winning Broadway sensation. I spoke with director Stephen Chbosky about the joys and challenges of bringing a hit musical from stage to screen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Now, Dear Evan Hansen has a really special DC connection. I saw it over at Arena Stage in 2015 where it started before it even made it up to Broadway and dominated. And you could just tell from the start that it was going to be a big deal even back then. But when did you first see it on stage? I know you adapted Rent from Broadway for the screen, so it's not your first time. But when did you see Dear Evan Hansen on stage?
I saw it 3 years ago, and I'm incredibly jealous that you saw the DC production. I've heard about it, in the second stage. Like it's like I never actually saw Ben Platt perform it on stage. So for me, doing the movie, it was like being like front row center on opening night every take. So that was exciting. But no, I'm incredibly jealous. I saw it 3 years ago after he'd left the company, but I love the show. I love the music. The writing was great. The character was interesting. The story was like a surprise a minute. So I was all in. I called my agent the next day and said, if they make a film of this, I want in.
Oh, and you're totally right about sitting front row seat and sort of seeing Platt just cultivate the role. You knew it was going to be something big. Like you could see him doing those every little facial tick or little choices he was making on stage to do social anxiety disorder, and also it deals with heavy themes of teen suicide, all kinds of stuff. You've dealt with coming of age themes before. Perks of Being a Wallflower was awesome. Wonder was really good at adaptation as well. Why is it important for teens and younger audiences, you think, to see a movie like Dear Evan Hansen and see you grapple with these heavy issues?
Well, I think it's important because with every opportunity to actually talk about these things, it's brought out into the light. So often, we all know it. It's not really the thing that happens, or maybe it's not even the struggle itself, but it's the silence, or it's sweeping under the rug. That's what leads to most of the damage. So for me to make a movie about all these themes, whether it's depression, anxiety, social anxiety, suicide, or even some of the lighter parts of the film, which is like about first love and crushes and all those things. The more we talk about it, the more light it gets. The more light it gets, the better people's lives are. And I consider it a real pleasure and an honor to be able to make these kinds of movies, because Hollywood doesn't make them often, and I've gotten to make it now 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. Who knew, to your point, who knew a cast with a name on it could be like such a consistent symbol in a show or a movie. Well, let's pivot to the songwriting. I mean, Ben Chbosky and Justin Paul are, legends in their own time a little bit. They wrote all the songs for The Greatest Showman, La La Land, they won their Oscar for. But Dear Evan Hansen, man, it's the same thing. I mean, these are iconic show tunes now. I mean, Waving Through a Window particularly was just an instant show tune classic. Just dote on your songwriters real fast, and I mean, the gift of having such great songs in a movie makes it easier for you, right?
Oh, it's fantastic. That's look, that's a good chunk of why I did it. So often Broadway, it's like they don't have, I don't know, these songs are catchy and there's like a pop element and they're memorable right away. And I think the lyrics are genuinely profound. It's like great folk art. It's like this thing that speaks truth, but it doesn't get too ahead of itself. It's not too fancy to be understood by everybody. I think they're great populists and truly and very nice guys. Working with them was a pleasure. And the 2 new songs that they wrote, or in the case of the anonymous ones, co-wrote with Amanda Stenberg, are fantastic. I can't wait for the fans to hear the new stuff.
For sure. And then when you go to casting the movie, I mean, you've had a knack over the years. Ezra Miller is still in our minds from Perks of Being a Wallflower. Jacob Tremblay, of course, was in Room, and you brought him over for Wonder with the prosthetics and stuff. But how did you decide to go with, obviously Ben Platt because he was in the show, but Caitlin Dever too? I mean, Short Term 12, Last Man Standing, Booksmart. I mean, she's on a roll. But talk about casting those 2 leads.
Well, I look, Ben, to me, there was going to be nobody other than Ben to play Evan. Even though I never saw him do it on stage, I did hear the soundtrack like millions of other people. And even without the visual, it was so fantastic and emotive. So he was it, and And so in doing auditions, when Caitlin Dever, I remember the day, we saw a lot of great actors that day, genuinely, and all of them singing different songs. She came in, she had one scene, she sang Only Us, she made me cry instantly. And Caitlin Dever she's, it's funny. There was a joke on set that I wrote, which was basically, what is the opposite of a diva? It's a diva. She is that nice, she's that unpretentious, and she just brings the talent every take, every time. And she's a very generous actor to boot. So I just can't say enough about her. I would work with her again on anything I do for the rest of my career.
I love that. Opposite of a diva is a diva. That you should trademark that. That's genius. Well, cool. I mean, you said, in your mind there was no one other than Platt. So the question I have to ask, it's coming, is that Twitter controversy about him being 27 playing a high schooler. And did I read something that the streaming release might do some digital de-aging technology like Scorsese used in The Irishman? Or what's your canned response to that? Because I know you've had to address it a million times, but why do you think the movie can succeed in spite of that, or is that not even an issue to you?
It's only an issue to me because I really love and respect Ben Platt. I've worked with him. He's a fine young man. He's a great actor. And so for me, it's just, look, I honestly, having done these movies before with Perks Being Wallflower, everything else you mentioned, I have cast people of similar ages to play high school my entire career. And I think maybe the fact that like we have tape of him singing at the Tonys many years ago, that there's a comparison. Maybe that's why there's a hubbub, or maybe just, people have been cooped up for 18 months in their houses and are just looking for something to get out. I'm not even sure. To me, I always see, look, if you go see the movie, he's a genius. It's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, and let alone worked with. So, if by the end, you're still not convinced, then it wasn't for you, and that's fine. It's like we live in a free world, and everybody's entitled to their opinions. I will say this, having gone screening after screening after screening after screening for Q&As, and just to get the word out, right? It's like once the movie's over, the vast, vast, vast majority of people don't say boo. It's a great performance. It's a lovely story. And he's a treasure as far as I'm concerned. By the way, that was a very long answer. That wasn't canned at all.
Thanks. I was dreading asking you that one because I admire your previous work and everything. So I'm glad you hit it head on there for me. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the honesty.
You were very welcome.
Awesome. Well, I know they're giving me the go home, as happens in these quick Zoom interviews, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm sure Ben appreciates all that support. And yeah, like we saw him in DC, and I got to say on stage, it was, he was a magical performance. You could tell a star was born with that. So thank you again, everybody. It's Dear Evan Hansen. The movie version, it hits theaters September 24th. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.